have today Professor Ronnie Newman here with us for an interview. Professor Ronnie Newman, an award-winning Harvard University trained researcher and published author in the field of mind-body medicine.
Ronnie Newman. Give everybody a big hand to Ronnie Newman.
Sri, it is an incredible honor to be able to interview you on this special topic of the convergence of science and spirituality. I am particularly honored to do this with you as one of the foremost spiritual leaders on the planet. And as a scientist, when we look at scientific research, what we see is that the more deeply science probes into cutting-edge fields such as mind-body medicine and quantum physics, the closer the connection between science and spirituality, Eastern and Western, becomes. And as I noticed in your office, I was in the Secretariat's office earlier, and I learned that you also have a bachelor's degree in physics and 18 honorary PhDs. So shall I address you as Dr. Sri?
It's up to you, however you want to address me. Yeah, that's fine, Ronnie.
Okay, Dr. Sri. What I'd like to do, if it's good with you, I'd like to start by exploring the science behind the subjective experience I've had here at the International Center, and then look at issues that are close to the heart of everybody in the world: violence and peace, health of the mind and body, and what is the farthest reaches of human potential. You know, it's said that Einstein used only 5% of his full mental potential. So I have no idea, and I suspect you have a very good idea of what it looks like to develop full potential. So,
first of all, we need to identify different faculties that a human possesses. It's not just the brilliance of mind, but he also has a heart factor. That's the feeling factor. You know, some may be very brilliant, but how do they feel about themselves, about everybody around them? It's something that we need to look into. Then emotions like compassion, love, and sense of belongingness and security, these are some very important emotions that a human being is endowed with. Are those emotions fully nurtured in a human being? Or are they very closed down, selfish, or very poor in their communication with others, or feel connection with everybody, or do they keep feeling very lonely? As you know, in UK, they have established a ministry called Loneliness Ministry, because 18% of the population feels lonely. And they may be high intellectuals. They might have been those who have excelled in their field of science or even arts, but this feeling of loneliness is because they are unaware of a factor in them that connects them with everybody. You know. Then you have the other aspect of centeredness. Is one centered, or are they able to, how much stress one is able to take, how many challenges one is able to take on. So all these aspects cannot be ignored when you talk about a human potential. Human potential also includes the sharpness of intellect and their communication skills and their confidence and the way they can, control their both sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. That would interest you more. I know it's a thing that that is easily possible for yogis. When you do some breathing exercises, you are able to, control your heartbeat. You are able to control your blood pressure. You are able to control some of the functions. I mean, you are the best person to talk about the research on those things. But these are some of the abilities in the periphery. That's not the most needed one. The most needed one is the expanded awareness that one lives with. That is something that indicates one's ability is being used more and more.
Beautiful, thank you. As a scientist, what you're saying is thrilling. I'd like to come to two specific areas and then come back to the human potential. When you talk about controlling the emotions and having compassion and these positive emotions, can you explain to us how the practice of meditation allows that to happen, or why it happens through meditation?
I think that's your job. I can tell you how to meditate, but why it happens, how it happens, is also, I leave it to scientists to probe into it. The intuitive ability is another area that we all possess. As kids, we all are born with it, but we were never taught to nurture that. If we can nurture that intuitive aspect of our consciousness and retain it, protect it from the childhood, we would be exploring many dimensions that are here with us.
I had an example of one of the students who has graduated from the intuition process, a darling 11-year-old girl. And what I saw, there's no scientific explanation that I have ever come up with that allowed for that to happen. So I'm wondering what I saw, which seemed impossible, but as a scientist observing, I know it was possible. I was observing it. This little girl was able to, with her mind, move sticks around a table, blow them off the table, copy things in languages with characters that she'd never seen before, languages she'd never even heard of that I knew that she didn't. Can you talk a little bit more about
we
how
have 80,000 kids like that today in the world who have been trained, 80,000. And there are children who can blindfolded go in bicycle and move around the obstacles they find in their path. So this indicates that they are using another part of their consciousness or brain, which beckons scientists like you to do research on it. Spirituality challenges science to move forward. So far, it was the science which was challenging spirituality. Now we have taken a turn. Now
Absolutely.
it's the spirituality which is challenging science to come on, explore this, find out more about the consciousness. But one thing you need to know, unlike in the Occident, in the Orient, science and spirituality was never at loggerheads. The reason is, the parameters were the same. The methodology was same. The criteria were same. In Orient, unlike in Occident. In Occident, you are said first you believe, and then one day you will get experience. Here in the Orient, they never said you believe first. Here you said you explore. So your spirit of inquiry is kept intact. Whereas in the Occident, they said don't ask questions. Here he said you must ask questions. So all the scriptures in India, they begin with questions. Someone asks a question, someone else answers them. And so not one scientist was ever persecuted in this land.
That is so beautiful.
Science was always encouraged. The spirit of, even in Bhagavad Gita, having said everything, in the end, Lord Krishna tells Arjun, now you think about what I have said. And if it appeals to you, to your intellect, then you do it.
Yeah. That's wonderful. I have several explanations from neuroscience for spiritual experiences or spiritual events that happen and the effects of meditation. And so I'd like to share them with you, but first I'd like to hear from you your perspective. One of the things that happened for me when I came here to this international center is I've had 8 meditations with you. And every one of them was more settled and more sublime than the meditations I have by myself, even though I'm a regular meditator. Now, as a scientist, 1 or 2 is a probability, it's a likelihood of error. But 8 out of 8, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know this is more than coincidence. Can you give us some insight into why, when somebody meditates in the presence of a realized sage like you, the meditations become so deep?
As a quantum scientist, you know this, everything is just vibrations. So wherever there is some deeper positive vibration that catches on. It's just like the cold, common cold. You sit with someone who has a cold and then you start sneezing in the next 10 minutes. So if cold can be contagious, joy can also be contagious. Love is also contagious. Love is also contagious.
Yeah.
Yes. So, meditation can also be very contagious.
Yes. And can I share with you from a neuroscience perspective what may be happening when you talk about joy is contagious?
Yeah.
Okay, there was a discovery, which I find one of the most exciting discoveries in neuroscience, of something called mirror neuron systems. And the way that this was discovered, scientists were doing research on the brains of rhesus macaque monkeys, who are supposed to be our closest relative in the animal kingdom. And one of the scientists came in late, as scientists often are, into the lab with his lunch, and he sat down in front of the monkey cage and started eating his lunch. And it turned out that he noticed after a while, every time he raised his hand to his mouth to take a bite of his sandwich, the motor cortex in the monkey's brain that's responsible for this movement lit up. And it was so precise that when there were multiple experiments that even whether the cup was full of liquid, a first cup of taste of chai versus the last sip in the glass, that different numbers of neurons lit up for the less effort it takes when the chai is almost gone. That's called mirror neurons. And in humans, it's been discovered that we have mirror neuron systems, so that when I have the great blessing of gazing into your eyes, that what happens is that the emotions that you're experiencing light up sections in my brain, the same sections that are lit up in your brain.
Oh yeah, this is interesting. Huh?
Yeah.
So everything is catchy.
Can you describe a little further? I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. Your office also told me that you said that at this time, when entropy is 0, the God principle touches the earth. Can you talk about entropy and orderliness and God?
A scientist from Colorado had come that it is his words actually. God principle is when there is no entropy. So that is deep meditation, where there is no entropy. Whereas God is always there. God means what? G-O-D, generator, operator, and destroyer. And that principle is always there everywhere. But when your mind is calm and settled, you are in touch with it. It becomes clear. It's like the sky is, if it's cloudy all the time, like in England, you don't see the blue sky. And when the clouds clear, then you get a glimpse of the blue sky. Like that, It's not that God is touching or nothing like that. That God is that energy which is beauty, which is love, which is purity, which is omnipresent, which is what you are all. Everybody is made up of that one thing. We are all made up of that one principle. So when the mind is calm, then you are more accessible to that vision.
Can I share with you just briefly
Yeah.
one thing on what you're talking about with God descending? I thought of heaven on earth. And I have learned from a summit I was at just a few weeks ago in Latin America that the entire police department in the province of Bahia, Brazil, had taken these practices, your program, and that there had been one of the reasons they took it on is they were so desperate because there were so many murders, killing by police of civilians, and so much violence. And what happened is that the police killing of civilians dropped 50%, and the amount of ammunition that the police used dropped by 70%. And what this shows to me, in terms of the marriage of science and spirituality, is that people are, as you say, being less reactive. And the human brain is such, I'd like to hear your comment on this. We are trained as a species to be peaceful and to be quiet and to be compassionate. Children as young as 2 years old are shown to offer up a toy to somebody who looks sad. So it's our nature when we're not stressed. And what happens with the breathing practices, the breathing meditation that you teach, is that people are able to stay in what we call the wizard or the Sri brain, where creative problem solving and emotion regulation is, rather than flip into the primitive, what we call the lizard brain, the reactive survival brain. And when police and individuals are able to stay in the wizard brain and not the lizard brain, then peace on earth and prosperity dominate. So can you talk a little bit about the role of meditation in creating peace on earth?
I think you have said it. I have nothing to say. Lizard brain and wizard brain. Okay. So you mean all of them are more in the wizard brain?
When we're around you, and if people meditate regularly, they actually research
When
at
you
UCLA's.
meditate, did you hear that? When you meditate, you are more on the wizard brain.
In
If
fact-
you don't meditate, you are on the lizard brain.
And this comes from research at UCLA's Brain Research Institute, doing research on your practices.
Oh, very good. That's a good thing. University of Southern California, UCLA,
Yes,
is doing research on our Sudarshan Kriya
Yes.
and Sahasamadhi and all that. no?
Yes.
Very
yes,
good.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes. And the last thing is that we find in the research, the International Journal of Neuroscience printed an article. They did research showing that meditators age more slowly than non-meditators. That there's a difference between the biological age, which is how much wear and tear the body has, and one's chronologic age, or what's on your visa to come to India. So, and the longer people meditate, the bigger the disparity, the younger in years they become from their chronologic age to their biologic age. So do you want to talk a little about how
I
meditation
won't
does
ask
this?
you how old are you.
Shall I really
Rania,
tell you?
You are very young.
I can tell you if you want. I'm 67.
Oh my God. Does she look like 67? No way. Do I look 64, 3?
Yeah.
Do I look 63?
Yeah, you're only...
Oh my, she said yes, so I have to meditate.
Well, it depends whether we're looking at your birthday, the candles on your cake, or your youthfulness. Your youthfulness, I'd say maybe 11.
You mean I'm not even teenager?
You're ever young, and ever wise at the same time. Something for all of us to aspire to.
Lovely. So let us do a short meditation, Ronnie. Is that okay then? We'll do a short meditation. Yeah.